Good afternoon, good morning, good night, depending on which part of the world you're listening in from. I'm Blackbright and feeling a bit cold outside today. It's 1 degree over here in the UK. Anyway, on quite a serious matter today, we're talking about should you be vulnerable? Should you be feeling vulnerable about being deported? A lot of people think it's only because it's only the Muslim country, the 7 Muslim countries that are at risk. And if that's what you think, you're sad, you're going to be mistaken, and you're going to be faced with a big shock if you leave the country. Now, I'm going to read out the main reasons, first of all, before I show you a short video, why you may be vulnerable to deportation. It might go without saying, but I'm going to say it all the same. Okay, I'm going to read it so I don't miss anything out. You're vulnerable from deportation if you're not a US citizen. That's the first and foremost. And you're not a US citizen and you're planning to travel. That's the first one. Second, if you're from one of the Muslim countries, I think... where did I write that down? Anyway, one of the 7 Muslim countries. I know it's Sudan, Iraq, Iran, any one of those countries. Or if you're a person of colour, regardless of the shade or regardless of your occupation. In that case, you may not necessarily be deported, but you can undergo some vigilant scrutiny if you're travelling. You could be stopped at any point, and yes, so you could be subject to deportation. Anybody of any shade, of any complexion. If you don't look white, and if you don't speak proper English, or you know what they call white American, you're going to be subject to vigilant scrutiny regardless of your occupation. If you're highly paid and you're well established and you're an asset to the United States, after that scrutiny, they'll probably let you back in, okay? Providing you are a documented citizen. I mean, they're even stopping citizens, you know. They're scrutinising passports of citizens. And even though they're checking that they're citizens, they're still taking them away and subjecting them to further scrutiny. So that's the second one. The third one is, of course, if you've committed a crime, and that could be any crime whatsoever. And it's up to about 30 years. You could have committed that crime over 30 years ago, from the 1980s. They've got aggravated felony, and they've got this other one with a 2P or something. I don't know what it's called. But anyway, and just put it down. I'm making it simple. Any crime whatsoever, whether or not you were convicted in jail, if it's on your record, they're going to feel that you're one of, as Trump calls them, the bad ones. The bad ones he wants to get out. Okay? So, another one. If you've ever accessed public benefits, e.g. Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, temporary assistance, supplementary income benefit, the early childhood program or child health insurance program, or if you're on a low income. If you have accessed any of those public benefits, you're planning to leave the country and hoping to come back in, you're going to be faced with vigilant scrutiny before they allow you in, or you're going to be deported. I don't know where these people are deporting. I think they must be assuming that everybody's going back to where they came from for holiday, and therefore they can go back there. I don't know what they do if the person is going to a different country altogether. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Another one is if you're a child of a parent who entered the country undocumented, i.e. illegally, even though that parent may have legalized themselves through marriage. They are going to assume that that person legalized through that marriage and that was a sham marriage because they came here illegally in the first place. And it's got something to do with this birthright citizenship that Trump is trying to change. It's in the 14th Amendment that if you're born in the country, you're a citizen. But there's no kind of proviso if the person, the mother of the child, has got into the country illegally. So if the parents have come into the country illegally, does that 14th Amendment apply? For those of you who don't know much about the history of the 14th Amendment, it was to do with a black slave called Dred Scott versus Sanford. And back in, I think it was 1840, I didn't write down the dates. But anyway, they said that because he was black, he couldn't be a citizen. And then it was overturned by this 14th Amendment that said anyone born in the country can be a citizen. So that is the background of that 14th Amendment. So technically, as long as you're born in the country, you are a citizen of that country. But like Trump is saying, suppose you entered that country illegally, does that 14th Amendment apply? And he may be making a further amendment, which, you know, it's quite, there's a point there. Okay, so another one. You lied or misrepresented yourself through omission or error on any of the applications or petitions. If they can find that you lied about anything whatsoever or missed out something, and it could be construed that you missed it out deliberately, that's another reason why you could be called for a deportation hearing. Another one, you've married a citizen, a green card holder, and you're on a conditional green card visa. And this is over the last 3 or 4 years. You haven't got your final naturalization visa or anything like that. You're still on a conditional visa. You are vulnerable too. And especially if that marriage is broken down. And you're, I mean, unless the husband is deceased, of course. But yeah, that's another one. Or you're waiting for your citizenship papers to be approved, depending on the quality of the person. If the person is of good standing, has money coming in and is going to be of a benefit to the country, that person too could be subject to a deportation order. The green card was never a guarantee to enter the United States. It was a recommendation, and it's up to the Customs Border Patrol to use their discretion as to whether or not they allow you in. People seem to think that because they've got a green card, they can come and go and they're just like an American citizen. No, not at all. The only people who have a constitutional guarantee to enter the United States are American citizens. So those people who have green cards, forget it. You can be up and out in a jiffy. So I hope you have good standing with where you came from, your country of origin. I hope you've been staying in touch. I hope you've been good to the people. I hope you haven't gone over there and shown off and been all about that, you know, flashing all your money and all that kind of crap, because when you have to go back, it's not going to be pretty. So what else? If you've been out of the country for more than 6 months, that's another reason why they can, depending on your reasons, deport you, or they can ask you to apply for, to either re-petition or apply for, what's the other one? A returning visitor's visa, a returning resident visa. You'd have to apply for one of those, but that's going to be arduous and it's going to be expensive. So you can't say you're ignorant after listening to this, but there are some people who are arrogant. There are some people who think that just because they've been in the country for so many years, just because they're citizens, they should be treated in a certain way, just because they're lawyers, just because they're this and that. And oh, they didn't think that they were going to be troubled because they're blah, 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 blah. And it only applies to the Muslim countries. I mean, now they get to feel, I'm not wishing it on anybody, but now they get to feel what the unfortunates feel. Because as long as you have a shade, and as long as you have an accent, and you're coming through the border, you are at risk of either being deported or severely scrutinised. Anyway, I didn't mean to go on that long. I wanted to show you this video, a short clip of this video, and so you can get a kind of an idea of what I have been talking about. Okay? Come on, don't play up now.
Logan Airport. In an article in the Huffington Post, Espinosa Madrigal, who was born in Costa Rica, explains that he's lived in the U.S. for 3 decades, became a citizen, 20 years ago in 1996. He writes, quote, "It's disempowering and dehumanizing to have government officials question my citizenship and passport. My citizenship is not only a legal status, it's deeply rooted in my identity. If my personal experience at Logan is any indication, airport inspections are now targeting not only Muslims, but other minorities, including U.S. citizens, for extreme vetting." A day later, the former police chief of Greenville, North Carolina, says he was detained for over an hour by Customs and Border Protection agents when he was flying into New York City's JFK airport after returning from visiting his mother in Paris. In a Facebook post, he wrote he was a U.S. citizen and had worked in law enforcement in the U.S. for nearly 30 years. Hassan Aden wrote that after his detention, quote, "This country now feels cold, unwelcoming, and in the beginning stages of a country that's isolating itself from the rest of the world and its own people in an unprecedented fashion." Espinosa Madrigal and Aden now join us. I'm
going to move on a little bit.
Helpful customs agent agent that she started her shift and she took an interest in my case because what I imagine she saw was a lot of foreign nationals being brought in and released in about 5 minutes after their passports were vetted, and I was just sitting there for about 90 minutes, and finally she helped me get my whatever the vetting was done, and I was on my way. But really, the issue for me here is the policies of CBP, and something has changed. As I've stated, I travel internationally frequently, and it's always been a welcoming home, something that I always look toward when I get off my flight. Customs agents have always been polite, said, "Welcome back to the United States, welcome home." Not the case, and this was the first time that I've traveled internationally in 2017.
They took your phone?
Yeah.
Let me see the other one.
Where my vetting continued and where I was asked to produce additional proof of identity so that they can confirm who I was. This is the first time.
This guy, he actually showed them his passport, and it was legitimate.
That I had been subjected to this type of additional scrutiny and vetting. The last time I traveled was on January, right before the inauguration, and I came in through the country perfectly fine, like any other U.S. citizen.
Well, let me ask you something, Ivan. Your thoughts on what he's saying. Do you see this? I mean, you're law enforcement. Do you see this as an unshackling of law enforcement?
Well, they took the shackles off of CBP and placed them on others, U.S. citizens and others that are subjected to this kind of conduct now. It is humiliating, as Ivan stated. It is a position of, it makes you extremely vulnerable, and you have no idea what is happening to you at the time that it's happening. The reason why I really wanted to bring this up and very publicly was because there are so many people that are voiceless. Ivan and I both have voices and platform, and I think that it is our responsibility to shed light on this problem.
And Ivan Espinosa Madrigal, do you think you were targeted because of the lawsuit?
I'm not sure. I don't know what they were thinking, but what I know is that one of the greatest strengths of this country is that we do not have classes of citizenship. All citizens have the same rights and privileges, and that was certainly not my experience at the airport. So for whatever reason it was, whether I was targeted for my civil rights advocacy or based on the color of my skin and my identity, it's unconstitutional and un-American.
And Hassan Aden, you're familiar with database.
Yeah, so I think the message is coming over clearly now. I mean, I think people were okay when they thought it was targeting blacks and when they thought it was targeting Muslims. Now they realise it's targeting anyone of any shade. As long as you look like an immigrant, you are going to be subjected to extreme vetting before you come back into the United States. So don't get arrogant and think, oh, it's only those little ruffians that are getting stopped and deported. It's not. This is serious. It affects everyone, and it affects most particularly people of colour, or as they call us, immigrants. And they were stopped and vetted, even though they had, I didn't show you the whole video, but the guy from Costa Rica, he had a passport, an American passport, which was obviously a legitimate document, and they still examined it and went and took him for further scrutiny. So it has nothing to do with whether or not you're a green card holder even. It's that I think they're trying to bring back what it was before Dred Scott. Before Dred Scott, no black person was a citizen, regardless of variations of shades. And the 14th Amendment rebuked that, repealed that. So anybody of any colour, as long as you're born in the United States, you could be a citizen. So I don't know if Trump is trying to go all the way back to do that. Because to stop those two in particular, and you can see they're really, really light-skinned, you can see they're very, very well-spoken, they wouldn't have had any reason to feel that they were illegal immigrants. But there again, a lot of these custom border patrol officers, they're not trained properly. You know, some of them are so racist, all they see is the shade or the colour. They have no perception of how to communicate or the people who they're communicating with. It shouldn't really matter on the status of a person. Everybody should be treated equally. And I do understand that immigration is a problem and that those people who have committed crimes shouldn't be a part of the tapestry. But in any event, I thought I'd put it out there. I hope you find it useful. It's strange though, because sometimes I don't feel like talking about anything at all, and then the next day I'm kind of on the ball for days on end. Anyway, hope you have a wonderful evening. Keep safe, and I hope you're not travelling this Christmas if you're not a citizen. Bye-bye.